Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. You are watching another Ace of Spades Friday website review, and I am Non. Today I'm going to talk to you about a whole bunch of things, and most of it can be summed up in this proposition. Drive prospects slightly mad with desire by playing hard to get. To illustrate the principle, www.nelsonphotographers.com. And as always, the photo conversion rate checklist, first reaction, orientation, desirability, and offers, with the Odo elements being the important ones, which have to get attention, using contrast and eye path. Let's dive right into the first reaction. How does the site make me feel? Alright. First reaction is fairly good, because you've got this quite attractive, maybe slightly cliche, but still quite good-looking masthead image here. You've got a fairly spacious layout. The white space is nice and open. It doesn't feel cramped. There are a couple of photos along here. Nothing really bad strikes the eye. It may or may not be a template design. That's no big deal. It's still quite attractive. The only odd thing that jumps out at me is something I'm going to mention as we get into orientation. Am I in the right place? And the first thing that I obviously do, and I want to find out if I'm in the right place, is I have a look up the top. Now, this Nelson Photographers image here has caught my attention and dragged me away from the very top of the page. But because of the reverse text, you've got a bit of contrast going on, so my eye jumps back up and I see Sarasota wedding photographers, Boca Grande wedding photographer, Tampa, Florida, Fort Myers wedding photography, yeah, so on. And I'm like, what? What is all this? These look like keywords. Has someone forgotten to close a tag in the header? Doesn't look like it. What it looks like is that someone's trying to stuff keywords onto the top of the page in the hope that it will increase your Google ranking. And this is not the case. Google is going to be like, no. I'm looking in the title tag, and I'm looking in the meta description tag. I'm ignoring the keywords tag, because that's what all search engines do. And I'm ignoring weird keywords stuck in the top of the page, which obviously do not fit into a sentence. Google is quite intelligent. So I would suggest that in the interests of not making yourself look a bit weird and confusing readers, this is the first thing to go. Now, in terms of other orientation elements, Nelson Photographers tells me that this is a place for, Nelson Photographers. That's fairly clear. Emotionally expressive, artistically created. As a tagline, it's pretty standard and not very helpful. It would be better if I could see a more down-to-earth description of Nelson Photographers there, so that I had a better idea of what exactly it is they do. Now, obviously, they do wedding photography judging from the images, but what is it that makes them special about wedding photography? What is it that the site is about, and so on? Then finally we get down to the section here, the navigation and the headline. Navigation is quite clear, there's no problem there, that's good, except for the lack of a homepage link. That should be there at all times to anchor your prospect, because your homepage is where he's always going to fall back to if he gets lost. And capture the moment, freeze the memory. That does not really tell me anything about where I am on this page. This doesn't tell me what the page is about. It doesn't really convey a value proposition. So let me talk about that as we get into desirability. Do I believe I'll gain more than I invest? And desirability starts at the headline. Capture the moment, freeze the memory. Okay, well, in fairness, if I am looking for a wedding photographer, I probably want to capture the moment of my wedding, and I want to freeze the memory of my wedding in time, as it were. And being that I'm coming up on only my 5th wedding anniversary in November, I'm still reasonably familiar with what it feels like to have to plan a wedding. And I know that there is an awful lot of angst involved with finding wedding photographers and all that kind of thing. But I suspect that more or less any wedding photographer is able to say something like capture the moment, freeze the memory. So there's no unique value here. There isn't any kind of differentiating factor. There's nothing which really makes me think, wow, these guys stand out, I should definitely buy from them rather than from other wedding photographers. Then we've got the copy. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the copy, because copy is something I don't normally talk about, because it's a little bit difficult in video format. It's hard to come up with alternatives on the fly, because, well, talking is different to writing. But this is actually quite a good example of copy which could be tweaked a little to be much more effective. What we've got at the moment is, well, let me read it to you. Falling in love is easy. The hard part is planning your wedding. Your wedding photographers play a vital role in capturing and preserving these emotions for you. Choose the right wedding photographers, and they remain your photographers for all of your life's events. That's the lead. To me, this sounds a little bit needy. They're trying to place the emphasis on me, the prospect, and they're talking about falling in love and planning the wedding is hard, and these are obviously things which are close to my heart. They're in the conversation that I'm having in my head, so that's a good start. But then they jump too quickly to the wedding photographers playing a vital role. I would suggest that it would be much more subtle if you talked about the wedding photographs, capturing and preserving the emotions in an image or in images. And I would omit the part about choosing the right wedding photographers, because they will remain your photographers for all your life's events, because that sounds awfully self-serving. It sounds as if what is really going on here is a little bit of, yes, it's all about you, but we'd really like you to hire us forever. So what you're kind of implying here with this sort of phraseology is a long-term commitment, and long-term commitment is not something that you want to dive right into. Your homepage is very much like a first conversation in a bar with a girl. Your headline is your pickup line, so you have to make it good. You have to indicate why she should talk to you at all. And then, once you start talking to her, you need to make the conversation very much about her to begin with, because, well, let's be honest, she's the one you're interested in, and she's the one she's interested in. If you start talking about things like marriage at the very first paragraph of your little conversation, then you've got a problem, because she's going to be like, whoa, slow down, Tiger, this is way too much, I'm out of here. But that's kind of like what is going on here. You're saying, choose the right wedding photographers, and they remain your photographers for all of your life's events. That's like walking up to a girl and saying, hi, how are you? Choose the right guy, and he'll remain your husband for life. And she's like, what? Then we get to the second paragraph. As an award-winning husband and wife team, your wedding photography is captured with a his and hers point of view. You will have two photographers, two unique perspectives, twice the coverage. You'll have two photographers who can be in two places at the same time. As you look back on your day, you will have had complete wedding coverage by adding videography. Video is your life in motion. Now, let me talk about some technical points of writing here. If you do any writing of your own, it's important to listen right now. I know this sounds boring, but this is important stuff. An award-winning husband and wife team. Award-winning should have a hyphen. Your wedding photography is captured with a his and hers point of view. His and hers should be in quotation marks or something to set them apart from the rest of the sentence, so that when your reader scans over it, it doesn't cause a hiccup and a bump, because it's not a standard way of talking. It is something that you would say, but it's not something your prospect expects to read. So you need to set them out. You will have two photographers. Two should be a full word. Two unique perspectives. Two should be a full word. Unique perspectives shouldn't be capitalized. Twice the coverage shouldn't be capitalized. Exclamation mark makes it sound a little bit needy again. A little bit like, oh, look how awesome this is. Please, please, please pay attention. You will have two photographers. Two should be one full word. Two places should be the full word. Same time. Exclamation mark. Again. Surely lots of wedding photography agencies can offer two photographers. This doesn't sound like the kind of unique benefit that you want to talk about. And as you look back on your day, you will have had a complete wedding coverage by adding videography. Okay, this is a new paragraph. Videography is not the idea that this paragraph is conveying. This paragraph is talking about a his and her point of view. Once you start talking about videography, that's a new idea, and you need to get into a new paragraph where it's confusing. Complete wedding coverage. Complete, as you can see here, is underlined. Underlining on the internet indicates a link. That is the only purpose of underlining text on the internet, to indicate a link. So the fact you can't click on it is a mistake. By adding videography, video is your life in motion. Far too many exclamation marks. Makes it sound extremely needy. Okay. Many times you are asked how to make a wedding totally you. First create your wedding around your personalities, then have photographers like Tom and I, it should be Tom and me, create amazing photographs that reflect those personalities. Okay, while I'm talking about grammar, let me talk about the difference between I and me in this case. Then have photographers like... Now, take out Tom and take out and see if the sentence still makes sense. Then have photographers like I create amazing photographs that reflect these personalities. Doesn't make sense. You would say, then have photographers like me create amazing photographs that reflect those personalities. So what you do when you add Tom and is you just add Tom and. So then have photographers like Tom and me create amazing photographs. Okay. And then we get to the free ebook. How to make your wedding totally you. Name, first, last, email, and submit. Okay, well, I probably would be interested in a free ebook on how to make your wedding totally you, but I don't know that there is enough information here to make me really want to give you my first and last names and my email address. Maybe if it was just my email address, I'd be like, oh yeah, it won't take 2 seconds, and I'll just stick it in there and hit submit. I would suggest that removing the first and last names will decrease the friction, and emphasizing the sign-up form will help people to actually notice it and to sign up, because it's at the very bottom of the page. By this stage, people might have finished scanning, because they probably aren't going to be reading every word. They've finished scanning and they've jumped back up to the photographs, which are the dominant elements on this page. And I'll talk more about those in a second. At the very least, it would be great to move this over here, so that it's sitting in a sidebar, and it'd be great to emphasize some key benefits of the ebook. One really effective way of doing this is to pick out 3 or 4 specific actions or techniques or principles that the ebook talks about, and then to describe them in such a way that they tantalize your prospect by telling them what the technique does without telling them what the technique is. And these are called fascinations. And a great many ads in the 20th century have sold millions and millions of dollars worth of product purely on the basis of fascinations. The more fascinations you have, the more product you tend to sell, because people scan down the bullets and they happen to see one that jumps out at them, and different fascinations will jump out at different people. But for a free ebook, you don't really have to do that much selling. 3 or 4 fascinations would certainly do the job. And that would certainly increase your chances of getting a sign-up. Now, let me talk about images finally. Images, as you know, are very important for desirability because, well, they're visually dominant. They illustrate value if they're done right. And if they're not done right, they drag attention away from the other desirability elements, the copy, namely. And you end up with a very reduced amount of desirability because the eye flow is being disrupted, and your prospects aren't actually reading the stuff you want them to read. Here the images are alright. You've got a bit of an odd spacing between them, and they're not the same height. So that feels slightly unprofessional. Studies also show that this is especially applicable offline, but I believe the principle is transferable to online. Having multiple images is far less compelling than having just one image. Smaller images scattered around the page or even next to each other are much less compelling than one larger image, and there's a reason for that. It's that people like to focus on one thing at a time. So by sticking 3 elements side by side, 3 images side by side, not only do you not get as clear a view of each of them, because they're smaller, but you also have your attention divided between them. So in an offline ad, the recommendation is always to have a single large image rather than several small ones. Online, you can have the best of both worlds, because you could put an image carousel here, a slideshow. So have each of these images cropped to a certain size, and preferably more or less this size. To get away with that, you'll need to make this smaller, but that's fine because it's way too big already. And then you can just have them rotating. And so you get the benefit of having multiple images, and you get the benefit of having just one image. And the benefit of multiple images is actually quite strong, because I've seen recently some research which shows that using a carousel increases conversion rates, basically because it increases readership by showing different images to different people. Not everyone is going to be attracted by an image of a girl on a horse. Some people might be attracted to the image of the couple, for example, while others will be attracted to the girl on the horse, and so on. Okay. So I've talked a lot about desirability. I haven't given you any solid ideas for changing the copy yet. There is one thing that I need to say, and that is that at the moment it sounds kind of needy, as I've said, and there's an easy way to fix that. 2 ways, in fact. Firstly, you'll notice it says, as an award-winning husband and wife team. Award-winning is really downplayed. If I had won 2 awards, as I happen to know that they have, because they've got another site, a very strange system here. They've got a bunch of sites which all say Nelson Photographers, but this one's called savvybrideuniversity.com/blog, and this one's called fortmyersweddingphotography.com. Very confusing to prospects. One website is quite sufficient. If you're having trouble with SEO, it's better to hire an SEO expert and fix it rather than trying to have multiple sites. Or use AdWords, or use other kinds of marketing. And maybe I'll talk more about that in another Ace of Spades email next week. Anyway, we've got 3 awards. We've got Bride's Choice Awards 2010, we've got Bride's Choice Awards 2011, and we've got 2011 pick the Not Best of Weddings. Also recommended by simply thebestgroom.com, I suppose, yes, com. Whatever that is. Anyway, that's a whole bunch of awards. Whoa. If I were looking for a wedding photographer, I would really want to know that they had won a whole bunch of awards. That's significant information in my book. So I would be sticking those right up here, and I would be emphasizing them in my copy. Now, the second way that you can make readers want you and not seem needy, I mean, if you have won awards, that by definition shows that you are not needy for customers. You're obviously really good. People must want you. The other thing that you want to do is use stories. Now, let me say that I'm not saying that Nelson Photographers are in need of customers. I'm just saying that they sound needy with the current way their copy is set out. Lots of exclamation marks, kind of slightly less than subtle attempts to emphasize the benefits of hiring them and getting into a long-term business relationship. A story changes all of that. You can illustrate every single one of the propositions which are mentioned here in a story, making them non-threatening, making them seem natural, making them implicitly accepted because they haven't been explicitly described with propositions, but rather they have simply come out as a natural consequence of the story. The reader is interpreting for himself. How can you do a story? Well, stories are not actually as hard as you think to write, because the truth is that we all think in stories. That is our natural way of thinking about pretty much everything, especially daily events in our lives. Anything that we tell people, we tend to put it into story form. And we tell stories to each other all the time. Anytime we relate something that happened to us, that's a story. And we find stories extremely interesting, and we find them extremely compelling. And just this morning I was discussing with the Information Highway wife about how songs that use stories are usually extremely popular and extremely they make you want to listen to the end because of the story. Recently I watched a movie that started with a song about a cowboy losing his horse, and then as the movie began, the song faded out halfway through, and I was like, what? What happened to the cowboy and his horse? I wanted to know. I didn't want the song to end. I mean, I didn't particularly like the music, but I really wanted to know what happened in the story. So that's a really good way of getting prospects interested quickly and getting them to read your copy instead of just kind of scanning down. If you have any kind of story about a wedding that you've been to that illustrates the principle you're talking about here, that is perfect for what you're talking about. Essentially, it's a case study. It's a success story that you can tell about former clients that will relate to prospective clients. Prospective clients see the story about someone just like them. They see all the benefits that these people got, the couple, the wonderful memories that they have retained because of the excellent photographs, the videos, and so on, the him and her view. And they think, wow, this is really cool. This is emotionally compelling. This sounds like exactly what I want. Plus, look at all the awards these guys have won on the right-hand side. And so they certainly want to sign up for the free ebook, and then you've got them into a two-step lead generation strategy. You can then start selling them other things on the side if you happen to have other products, and you can certainly get in touch with them and say, look, we saw that you downloaded our ebook. Are you looking for wedding photographers? What did you think of our ebook? Would you like to hire us? Essentially, your customers have qualified themselves. All right. I know I've gone on at length today. I'm making up for last week's very short video. Let's get into offers. Do my goals match the available options? Well, probably at this point, I want to know how much it's going to cost me. That is always a concern unless you're incredibly wealthy when you're doing a wedding. I mean, people take out second mortgages for weddings. They want to know how much it's going to cost to hire a wedding photographer. Give them that information straight away. It's very important to emphasize benefits to get them emotionally invested before they get to pricing, which is why you want the call to action at the end, not at the beginning. But you do have to give them what they want. So the quicker you can explain the benefits and then get them into the pricing information, which they came here for in the first place, really, the better. If you give them the pricing information before the emotional benefits, then you have to back them into the sale instead of priming them in advance, and that's just hopeless. It's never going to work. But you do need to have a call to action, see pricing info or something along those lines, I would strongly suggest. They will also want to see your portfolio. So as well as having a carousel here and making it clickable so that you can see larger images or take them straight to the portfolio, you want to have some kind of link to a portfolio here. And looking up here, I don't actually see anything that tells me how I can view other photos that you've done. I can click on these ones, but that doesn't tell me that it's going to take me a portfolio. I really want to see a portfolio up the top because a portfolio is probably your number one asset as a wedding photographer. It shows how good you are. And if you're award-winning, you've got to be good. Alright. Lead gen, off on the side, that's your secondary objective in terms of revenue, but probably one of your primary objectives for the page because you want people to come back. If they decide that they are just looking around, they see your pricing info, they think, oh yeah, it's alright, I'll go have a look what else other people have got, you want to make sure they're going to come back. And they're not necessarily going to come back by themselves, but if you can contact them and say, here's some more valuable information, you can keep yourself in front of them, then they're definitely going to keep thinking about you as they're deciding on who to hire, and that radically increases your chances of getting prospects to turn into clients. Now, a couple of other comments. First of all, your submit button. Hideous, hideous, hideous. Change this immediately. The most common button on the internet is also the least effective button on the internet. And this is partly because it's the most common button, but it's actually for a much more significant reason. First of all, it practically disappears into the page. It's almost invisible. Make it much bigger and make it colored. Second of all, it's called submit. Look up submit in the dictionary and see what kind of connotations that has. Do you want to submit to someone? Not typically. Even if it's someone that you are very close to, which you probably are not close to someone who you may be thinking of hiring to do your wedding photography. Change that to reflect the value proposition of the free ebook. So you said free ebook on how to make a wedding totally you. At the call to action, you can then say discover how to make your wedding totally you now, or get your free information. Anything that will emphasize what the prospect gets rather than what the prospect has to do. Very important. Finally, we've got a bunch of other little offers here. What the heck is all this? Sarasota wedding photographer, Fort Myers wedding photographer. Huh? These are links I can click on. I can tell they're links because they're red. And I'm thinking, am I supposed to click on these? Are these links to other companies? What is this? And again, this is just keyword stuffing as far as I can tell. This looks like an attempt to increase search engine ranking. It's not going to work, and it's really confusing to customers. Search engines have to be secondary. If you're trying to generate traffic, there are much better ways of doing it than trying to stuff your page with keywords. Okay. Whew, I've covered an awful lot of stuff. Let me emphasize the top 4 things. There are a lot of things I could emphasize on this page because I've covered a lot of principles, but I think the top 4 are A, don't stuff keywords. It looks stupid and it doesn't work. B, carousels are more effective than multiple images. Very important principle to remember. And image carousels are quite easy to make these days. You can just download a drop-in plugin or a drop-in piece of code that will do it for you. C. Play up relevant awards. Very important if you actually have awards, because they're a huge credibility booster, and they mean that you're really good, and that's something that prospects want. And if you have lots of awards, you can raise your prices because you're obviously worth it. And D, express your value proposition with stories. If you're too direct, you often turn clients off and you sound needy. But if you're indirect and use stories, you often draw clients in and you drive them slightly mad with desire. Okay. For everything you need to know about this stuff, I talk about stories and all the different kinds of leads that you can use and all kinds of extra stuff in the full version of Attention Thievery 101. And of course there is heaps of information online as well in free videos. You can sign up for now. AttentionThievery.info. Head on over there now. It is currently free. And of course you may email me with comments, questions, hate mail, or you can get a $99 review for free, non at informationhighwayman.com. Thank you for watching. I will see you next Friday.